Alrighty. Welcoming on Jim Ho. I'm your host, Sully, and we're talking about some free key Star Trek writers who brought a lot to the show, whether they want to admit it or not.
They're quite willing to admit it. It's just that other people who don't recognize them, that they should get their place in the sun, their moment of glory also.
Right? It's like it's just up to the fans to and even just people, the genre and of just good writing in general, who just got to check it out.
Absolutely, you hear all that interplay back in TOS between Kirk and Spock and Bones. I mean, there's writers that made that happen. I mean, they delivered the lines, but someone had to write those lines, and those some of the best lines ever. That people remember. They spouted years and years after the fact. 50 years later, they still remember the scene about on Tholian Web, how Bones and Spock really full-paced lying to Kirk about his final order. It's so classic. It's
so classic. We often think of just Gene Roddenberry, and it's like, no, don't get me wrong. He deserves his own credit alone for overseeing the whole thing, but people forget, that he, by season 3, he was just giving notes. He was getting annoyed by having to deal with network execs. And we'll mention him a little more briefly, but I figured so we're gonna talk about DC Fontana, Harlan Ellison, and Gene Coon. And
sounds good.
I figure Fontana is just a cool one to get into because, back when,
she's a groundbreaker.
Groundbreaking, yeah. There weren't that many female writers back then, and they had to get through, the stereotypes and sexism that, they should just be housewives or whatever. And it's like she cut through all that bigotry back then. And, they titled her as, DC because they were afraid, it stands for Dorothy Catherine, and they were just afraid. Yes. And Roddenberry, much like how he worked with getting the, Kirk and Uhura, biracial kiss on, he was the right people know how to play their cards, and his poker face was, okay, just let's call you DC so no one will, we can get through basically the internet troll equivalents back then. We can get through and make this groundbreaking stuff and let you do your thing and make a living doing this. So DC, had made a living doing, writing for Streets of San Francisco and Ghost Story, and later, but yeah, she wrote various scripts throughout the run of the original Star Trek, and later contributed to earlier Next Gen, as well as the animated series. And
with that classic, Yesteryear. That is such a classic for her.
Yesteryear, a great one. And then a key, self-titled episode, Dax of Deep Space Nine. She also wrote free season 1 episodes of Babylon 5, as well as the 90s virtual reality cartoon reboot, as well as Roddenberry's inspired Earth Final Conflict, as well as the award-winning web series Star Trek Phase 2. And she's also contributed to other stuff like The Waltons, Logan's Run Show, Dallas, and Buck Rogers. So, and the 80s War of the Worlds. Yeah.
Yeah, I in fact, it was just kind of funny. I just posted on Facebook and on some of the groups how there was a Easter egg where Brent Spiner was talking to Le Hofstadter. And in the background, you have DC Fontana, you have David Gerard in the background as background players, just chatting as point guests. And there's just a cool thing to see that they're in the background over there, just hanging out, chilling, just having a couple liquids and just chit chatting.
Right. Just all these guys, even though they might not always be on screen, he keeps in touch with them. They're his friends.
I'm so glad that they were able to transcend the years, even though you're going from one series to another. You're jumping. There's a lag of say 15 years between TOS and Next Gen and DS9 and all that. That they're able to still keep them together and be able to interplay with them and just give a little nod to them in certain ways, even though it's been a long time. I remember those that did not with oh gosh, I remember the episode with maybe you could give me a name of the episode where Cisco is transported back in time, and he's at this Pulp Fiction magazine.
Yeah. Yeah. Total throwback episode. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a throwback that one of the characters on there was was in way DC Fontana, where she had to put her name as a guy because you wouldn't believe that a girl could write science fiction, so she had to write up as a guy. Had they known the plume to get a story on the air, so to speak, in print. So that was a nice nod to the Dorothy on that, where they had to use that similar to what they did on TV. That was a cool thing to see.
Yeah, it's very cool. She has unfortunately left us, but it's been pretty cool to see that she, got to be on some of the various conventions, making ofs and featurettes, and
yes,
and like you say, they do little inside jokes for her. She passed away in 2019 at age 76. Wow, man. And she has won the Morgan Cox Award in 2002 from the Writers Guild, and twice named in the American Screenwriters Association's Hall of Fame, and as well as inducted into the Museum of Pop Culture Sci-Fi and Fantasy Hall of Fame. So that's pretty awesome.
Well deserved.
Yeah, and she had previously worked in, a little known fact, on Roddenberry's show The Lieutenant, which was about a military boot camp.
Which had plenty of Star Trek actors on there.
And Dad in the movie. That in the movie Genesis 2, and Roddenberry, like any good producer, he would keep using some of the same good actors because he knew he could rely upon them to interpret his material and be on time. Yeah, she is kind of underrated in a way, because you kind of wish, often when I see writers that are mentioned, I often only see ones that are from like later, like. Well, we'll get to Coon, but I often see him like the first one mentioned, and often the rest of the time you see Roddenberry. And don't get me wrong, all of them did great stuff, especially later on. But yeah, I'll often only just see like Ira Stephen Barr, Renee Acavaria, and Ronald D. Moore. I'm like, okay, those guys are amazing, but don't forget some of the other OGs. Don't forget some of the other ones.
They're the ones, right? They're the ones who laid up the groundwork for everyone else to go past. They were the trailblazers.
They had to do this on actual typewriters,
Right. Oh, yeah. Back then, I had an old Olivia. So that was my old typewriter back in the day.
There you go. Oh, man. So, yeah, no, she's a total boss. And she's just so insightful whenever you hear her speak about writing. And
she has such a passion for it.
If anything, I would even argue, I know a lot of people like to complain about, Next Gen's first 2 seasons, how they might be a little dated and the show didn't have its voice yet. But I do feel like, if anything, a lot of her scripts, had a lot of plots that, would have definitely have been used back in the day on the original show. And she was just giving them that same blueprint to identify with, the newcomers.
Yes, I totally agree with that. There was enough. I won't say there was enough resistance to the new generation TNG, because all we had before was TOS, and then to have this new group of people come in to quote usurp our love TOS. A lot of people just had this attitude like, nothing could beat that. Well, they could. You just
it could be better, but she's at least got the right insight, and it's up to the new directors and producers and other people who they've hired to,
Right, to get moving also. So it wasn't. It's like I said, it's a team effort. Like it's a tapestry. One you can't do without the other. So
right.
So without the writers and without the people doing the various things behind the scenes, it's just not gonna flow. Or you can have something like Star Lost, or you're gonna have Logan's Run back in the day. I don't know, you remember Logan's Run, the TV show?
Good show. And Buck Rogers, I am a huge fan of. And so it's just cool that she was a recurring producer and got to write one key episode on that where he sees the Amazon women.
Yes. Oh, that was a hottie one. As a teenage boy, that was a goodie.
Yeah. I mean, And that's the thing, even when these shows get a little dated or don't seem as progressive when they're made by otherwise progressive people, they're still just a fun retro back in time kind of thing. I'm glad she got to be part of it, especially earlier B5 back when it was finding its voice. And
Yes.
J. Michael Straczynski, as we know, he took the Star Trek template and then he made his own, what he intended to be a mysterious 5-season run. And much like people were taken from X-Files, there are a lot of other just hardcore TV, writers who will often admit is like, we planned a 5-year run and then we took from B5. So, this was before Straczynski resorted to then, writing the whole thing, because it was cool that he had some of that inside help. And I think she was just one of 2 writers who contributed that first year. And,
like I said, yes. Like I said, DC just doesn't get the credit that she should get. And it's very unfortunate.
She should be on like every top 20 list, like but iconic sci-fi TV writers. I hope she can be on there somewhere.
She transcended not just one genre, not just Star Trek. She went different areas, like you said. She was on Babylon 5 and a few other ones. So she was able to change the plot and the elements to fit that particular series.
Because people forget, it was still produced just like a typical kind of Western or adventure show, and it just happened to have people in sci-fi suits and on a spaceship. But yeah, so this brings us to Harlan Ellison. You might know him best as the writer of A Boy and His Dog, which was later adapted into a pretty cool 1975 movie.
Yes, it was.
Yep. The short story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which is a 1967 short story about a computer that tortures the last 5 humans on Earth.
Yeah.
And Repent, Harlequin, said The TikTok Man, which is a story about a futuristic society in which time is regimented by a fearsome figure called the TikTok Man. And he's known for his cynicism, his views on atheism, elitism, violence, and even Scientology. And he's been interviewed by Merv Griffin and Tom Snyder, let alone how his Outer Limits short story was the very story that he accused the creators of the Terminator of plagiarizing.
Although I love that story with him, with the demon with the glass hand. That was such a classic. Oh my goodness!
I Have No Mouth. I love that Scream. One. Yeah, pretty creepy. And of course, The City on the Edge of Forever was the very script that involved some time travel, was an iconic original series Star Trek episode, and fans have learned to put their differences aside. Ellison disowned it because Roddenberry rewrote it like he did every script, and you look at the changes, they're pretty minor. He just has like problems with like how they address like the time travelers and other stuff like that.
I think Harlan was much more passionate about his work and refused to let anyone touch it. I mean, if you touch like one syllable of his work, he's gonna go crazy on you. Oh, you're touching my work. It's perfect the way it is. You don't need a major rewrite or minor rewrite. That's what he was. He was. I guess the person who said best was the guy from Robert Bloch. It says about Harlan that the only living organism I know whose natural habitat is hot water. I mean, that typifies.
I do seem to recall that author said some or like that. Yeah, and like you say, I mean, he is cynical, but I mean that's kind of what makes him great. He's just he has all this philosophy and all this off-kilter stuff that definitely evokes kind of all the Heinleins of the world, all these other guys, and plenty of these other satirists and what have you. And it's just so funny how that he's just worked on all these other things. He later went on to be on Babylon 5 as a creative consultant, and he and Straczynski got along just fine. He would pretty much just, for those who don't know, when you're a consultant, often you'll just be paid for a phone call. It's like,
but it's beyond call. Like you say, if you're a doctor or anyone else, You get to pay to sit there to wait for the phone call. That's your job.
That's
You get no
literally
phone
it.
call
Yeah.
or five phone calls. But you get paid anyway, so that's okay. That's a great gig. Be on call. You just hang and chill till you get the phone call. Well, now you get the Zoom call now. Before this is a phone call.
I love how his widow said that her husband put his Star Trek lingo behind him, but he would still never watch the so-called classic episode. And she said, "Let's not go that far." I'm like, okay, well, sounds like he was pretty annoyed. But yeah, he had a Jewish background. His father was a dentist and jeweler. His mom worked in a thrift store, and he was bullied in school largely for his faith. And that experience made him feel like an outsider and fueled his anger. And that's what he put into his various short stories, books, even his film reviews. And I always see him brought up, and I can't deny his place in the genre. And he looked at storytelling apparently as a holy chore, is what he cited as saying, and he passed away in 2018 at the age of 84. So pretty big life.
Yeah, long life. He has a great body of work. A lot of stories that he left behind for us. So I'm glad about that. He wasn't cut short.
He might be close to it, but what can you do? He has brought so much to the material.
It's just interesting, his personality. If I didn't know better, although just listening to some of his interviews and reading his interviews, if I didn't know better, I swear, because I'm bipolar. I got bipolar too, so I can understand when sometimes your filters are off and you say it the way it is, no matter what, and if you don't like it, he doesn't care. And then, God, that guy should be bipolar. I mean, no one's saying anything about it, but he suddenly has all the manifestations of being bipolar spectrum somewhere. So
I wouldn't be surprised because there are moments. Back before we had the internet and we were embracing any kind of mental health disorder that we had, or just unhappiness and addressing it, it seemed like people gave into peer pressure. You'd have parents who want to tell you, hey, you should work here. You'd have other kind of peer pressure, and it was uncool to say things that that were true to you.
Right. They didn't fit the norm like everyone else. You have to be a cookie cutter. If you want a cookie cutter,
that's what these actors often got. It's like, wait, what? You want to, because it was considered kind of a freak thing, no different than being a prostitute back then. And you're just like, well, yes. I want to perform for the stage and film. That's what I want to do. That's not a 9-to-5, job like being a clerk or a secretary or what have you. Yeah, sorry, that's not what I want to do.
I'm just sorry that the series, The Big Bang Theory, didn't come out like 20 or 30 years, 40 years ago when I was a kid growing up, because I could certainly relate to some geekiness of those guys, and because I got picked on like everyone else who was a little sci-fi geeky. It was terrible, but at the same time, it was just really felt a lot better back then. If I there's other people like me,
It was kind of the cult underground kind of thing, and exactly. Star Wars was the cool kid in school, and Star Trek was the uncool thing, and this is like I can like both. I'm gonna like both.
Yeah, I don't just own Star Wars. I enjoy Star Wars. I just passionate about Star Trek, and I love all the other genres out there. But I'm just passionate about Star Trek. But I don't just own all the other ones. They all have their place. A lot of them are quite good.
It's just Trek is a little deeper, and it's got a lot of other welcome elements of other genres. So yeah, it's kind of why we come back to it more. It's just
absolutely, and also it's got a lot more years of history that you have to interweave. And gosh, nowadays
some social commentary. Yeah,
you gotta be so careful, making sure you don't quote. Make mistake with canon, like, oh, but this happened back in 1967, and you can't do this because that's what they said. You can't break canon. Well, it's kind of hard to remember everything, even with all the resources available to you. Make sure you don't screw up and do something that's not going against what was done before,
or at least make sure the character has a consequence that kind of echoes some of that same stuff, that same commentary. Ooh. And I think that's just it. pretty much if you're hired by Track, it's not just that you're a fan, it's also that essentially you are, very used to reading all kinds of philosophy and what have you.
Sure. Yeah, you immerse yourself into the, you can wrap your body around the culture of Star Trek when when you have to, when you're in the writing mode, or you're doing your business when you're on the set, whatever. You just gotta just immerse yourself. You have to be a method actor or method
Correct.
writer. You just gotta go right into it and go right into.
Yeah, just like actors have their own character backstory. My character behaves this and that way, not trying to be a diva. This is just how we've done it since day one and established it. Same thing with the writers. Is like they always have their rules. It's like, okay. And Roddenberry, he was having kind of that bipolar kind of issue when he was losing his mind before passing away. And it's just like they would always have, one minute they would get a legit Gene reaction. It was like, okay, no one can die, or you got to resolve this peacefully. And then sometimes he would insert all this other stuff that was not part of his progressive, upbringing, because he was losing his mind back then. And his people know the infamous stories about his lawyer, taking over a few things, and he wasn't a writer, let alone anyone who should be giving a second opinion. He's just, Gene's, guy doing all the book work. It's like, dude, stay in your lane.
Right, stay in your lane, okay? You're not you're a lawyer. Do your or you're a bean counter. Stay in your lane. Don't get out of your lane, please. Okay.
You're right. No disrespect, but seriously, please respect the writers. And I can't blame Harlan for being like some of the other ones. I know Melissa Snodgrass and some of those other ones would say, and it's like, hey, we're thankful for the experience, and at the same time, those writers' rooms were a little toxic, and we had to just credit ourselves under a different name because we just hated being associated with those changes.
Yeah, it just goes to, like I said, they have not say ego, but they have their pride. This is your body of work. This is what you do, and to have your baby transformed to something you don't like. Yes, I like the paycheck, I like the prestige in doing it, but at the same time, I don't want to be associated and let people know that that's not really my baby. It was transformed like a Frankenstein monster to something that I don't believe in, but the money's good, so I want to continue to work with them. So I'll keep my mouth shut and just change my name. So what can I say?
1,000%. Couldn't agree with you more. And it leaves so much to just kind of just open up your mind and say, just sometimes the work is greater than anyone even realizes.
But especially once you give it the passage of time. A lot of times things that happen now, even for instance now in 2022, it may seem awful now, but you give it 10 years from now, it might not seem so bad. The same thing for a lot of the episodes and a lot of things that happened in Star Trek previously. It's sort of, when it happened, like, it kind of stinks. It's not really what it's about. And then you wait a while and you think, oh, it's a little more progressive than we thought. It's not as bad. Now looking back on it, that was when we looked at originally. So people just got to take a grain of salt, relax, take a chill pill, let history dictate what says. The way it is now with internet, everyone can state opinion. It's not like the old days where everyone's done by snail mail, fanzines, conventions. Now instantly, boom, I have an opinion. I'm gonna post it somewhere. Someone's gonna see it, and I'll have maybe like 500 followers who agree with me or not agree with me. And before that never used to happen, but now everyone has an opinion that could be shown, and it's just a much different playing field than now there was back then. It's much different.
Yeah, there's no real filter. It's like, okay, what do you hope? You should approach it like an essay, where it's just like, what do you hope to do at the end of this?
Right. That makes perfect sense.
But yeah, sometimes it's wishful thinking, where it's just like, okay, well, it's kind of backfiring.
It does backfire a lot of times. It certainly does. It certainly does. But like I said, it is what it is. And they said even like going just jumping over to Gene Coon. I mean,
Yes, thank you for that segue. Actually,
can't forget about him.
uh,
he,
yeah. So
he was a trailblazer. I mean, he established some of the pillars of what Star Trek is. The quote some of the Bible, or certain things that happened, and people followed. And it's glad that they didn't try to change it too much. They pretty much kept it the way it was. Um, the thing with the Federation and with the Prime Directive and everything else, it's pretty much it's the same now as it is back then. Minor adjustments, people change a little bit, but pretty much the core information message is still there, which I think is a great testament to.
he was a trailblazer for sure. Just kind of the unofficial showrunner in a way. He was just always one of the lead writers and producers, and much like DC, he later worked on the Streets of San Francisco, and before that, he did a lot of other war and western and crime shows like Have Gun Will Travel, Maverick,
Wagon Train,
which is often what Deep Space Nine was considered to be. Yeah, and Dragnet, Bonanza, My Favorite Martian, The FBI, and my favorite, Combat.
Oh my goodness! Oh, with Vic Moore. Oh boy, that's going back a long time. I remember that, but now
it pretty much was the Star Trek of its day. Is everyone gets together in a new village that they're at war in, and everyone gets their moment to speak and resolve an issue. And I mean, it makes sense that he would be on this because it's the same kind of deal, except now he's got to format it to Roddenberry's kind of standard, which is show all these different smart scientists and Starfleet military guys, and what do they do on their predicament. And it's cool that he got to do that. He was a producer also on the City of Edge of Tomorrow episode, so I'm sure he would contribute a lot of different things. And it seems like I can't go with one discussion without seeing him listed on one of the top Star Trek writer discussions.
It's just a shame they died so young. They died in the 40s.
He didn't make it past the 70s. Yeah, he passed away in 73 at age 49. Wow,
I just wish, like I said, it would have been so great to see him jump over into TNG where he could have participated in that. I'm quite sure he would have been a wonderful inspiration and the guidepost for other people to listen to format their ideas on how it should be, and incorporate his ideas and his beliefs in there. It was such a nice merging of beliefs and ideas into a new baby, so to speak. Combining the two.
It would have been welcome. It would have been totally welcome. He's done some big movies like The Raiders, The Killers, and Journey to Shiloh, as well as Roddenberry's TV movie, The Quester Tapes.
I love that. I'm so heartbroken it never became a series. They had such potential being.
It really could have. Funny enough, DC Fontana also wrote a novelization version of it.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
Foxworth, who was a common, track actor, also was the main cyborg android guy on there. And
with Mike Farrell, with BJ Honeycutt.
Yes, there's another throwback, man. You're going into the vault.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's probably the most prolific. He has probably more credits than any of these guys. He's done other stuff like Laredo, Peter Gunn, General Electric Theater, The Mod Squad, and Kung Fu. So yeah, he's some big games.
Yeah, I mean, it was spit out there. Give me a weekend.
Even the original show, The Wild Wild West. And what's funny is, that came out around this after Track, but my dad always kind of considered that, Track, but in the Wild West, if Kirk and Spock were, just badass sheriff, on a wagon train, and like a badass, one of them happened to be an inventor with sci-fi gizmos. So in a way, they're almost like the Batman and Robin, but in the West. Yeah. Oh man. Apparently, Bill Shatner dedicated a chapter in his memoir, Star Trek Memories, to Gene Coon called Unsung Hero, so that's pretty cool. And
to have Shatner give such a big play in this book really means a lot. Because great as the man is, he does not dispense credit as readily as he should. But in this case, he really gave it his all. So you know that it really was heartfelt when he gave that such a big plug to Gene.
Yeah, even when Shatner takes away his ego, he often really, you can often tell when he legit really likes someone.
Right.
Man, oh man. So that's pretty cool. That is. Altogether, who would you say are your favorites out of these three that we picked tonight?
Three, oh gosh, yeah. It really depends on my mood. I hate to say, people give that old cliche about what's your favorite 5 episodes of Star Trek. Well, it depends what
Can't pick your favorite. That's not good.
Well, you can't even you have to qualify. Are you asking about a funny, something that's funny? Then I go with like Trials and Tribulations, things of that sort. A piece of the action. If I'm going for humor, if I'm going for a morality play, like a Obsession or things like that, or it really depends like what I'm in the mood for. If I'm in the mood for if I'm in the mood for like a deep philosophical discussion, deep subject, then that's one set of episodes and so on and so forth. So I've got like five sets I go with, depending on my mood. Funny, action. If I'm like, just knock them out like the Doomsday Machine. Action, a morality play where you're talking about a deep talk about morality of some sort, whether it be obsession or things like that, or the human nature, something about human nature. So okay, Harlan, he's the person I go for if I want a deep thought on what's going on. He really writes deep into certain matters and he makes you think a lot.
Yeah, and even though a lot of his work is just adapted, the ideas just speak so big,
Right. And Gene, like I said, Gene, if I want something that's got a little humor in it, or just a little morality, I go with Gene.
Because he's basically Roddenberry's right hand. There's a reason they call him the Forgotten Gene. He's just like, he's there to kind of just make sure, hey, there's, like you say, it's a morality play at the end of this, in between the Spock and Bones humor.
Right, exactly. That type of humor, you don't get that often, and written well where you can believe them saying that. Or just
they would totally talk this way versus other ones where you're like, okay, that was rewritten by someone else,
Right. I mean, even that the scene in Immunity Syndrome where Spock tells McCoy, wish him luck, and he walks away and goes to the shell crab, and McCoy mutters real softly, "Good luck," but he doesn't tell him that in his face. Then later on, Spock says, "Dr. McCoy sure wish me luck." Like wow.
Whoa.
He didn't say his face, so it's like wow. That's a shock. The first time I understood that. And I think DC Fontana, she was, how do you describe her? She was the type of person that was a trailblazer. I treat her such because
she kind of would coat everything with detail, with characterization, kind of like any good writer's room.
She would coat everything, and she was meticulous, and she
here's the science behind this whole scenario, which they'll have to use to stop the nuclear reactor, or so and so's first day using a spaceship. She's just that kind of cool gal, and
and she was like, she reminds me of a fan being on the show. Like if I was gonna be on the show Star Trek, I want DC Fontana to write me into it the way she would write me, because that'd be like a fan doing it. Like going into the show and being being a fan guy, just oozing and just taking it all in. That's what I feel about her.
Yep. And she noted how she really dug all the characters, just how strong they were. She, believe it or not, even though she only did one episode, Deep Space Nine was her favorite. So that's wild. Usually, when you get the track writers, they're often just going to mention just what they worked on, as their favorite. So that's pretty wild. But yeah, she went from being Roddenberry's secretary to then being a key writer, and uh, uh, she's quoted as going into season 3 when Roddenberry did not wish to continue as story editor. She wanted to freelance and write for other series. Yes. I did, however, want to continue to do scripts, and Gene was agreeable to this. I was given a contract in February of '68 and called for a guarantee of free scripts with an option for free more. When anyone had asked why I chose to leave the editorship, I had always given this reply.
The funny thing is, back then, you're talking back 55 years ago, 53 years ago, where
contract negotiation was different. Yeah.
Exactly. There, you look at it's in the 60s. You want to get paid. You have to put money, you pay your bills. It was a cool show, but you still have to pay your bills. And there's no backup like there is now, where if this failed, I could do something else. Nowadays, you know what? If you write for Star Trek, any of the new series or anything else, you have backup. You have network. You have all these different things you could do to make money or do something else to branch out. So people don't realize it's a completely different animal back in the 60s. Completely different. You got to realize the time frame and the era you're working with all the time. It's not just political. It's what I call geopolitical or geohistorical, where you have to realize that the time element where it was is very, very important. 1960s.
Yeah. The post Vietnam, and we're having to find ways to creatively outspeak,
Right. Exactly. Just all you gotta do is just think of the 60s. Think of what was going on during the times Star Trek was on. You get Vietnam, you have assassinations, you have civil rights. You have always this,
all the stuff in question that we're trying to break through.
Exactly. So, and I always like the fact they were able to stick a little something in with the past ascensions, where they would get a little morality play about the era that they were in the 60s. I always thought that was kind of cool, looking back on, like they would slip that past the good old NBC would edit censors and let them get fly with that. So that's always cool.
Oh yeah, and especially now where there's just so many other guys that just either do or don't let stuff fly, and it's just cool that this is how some people it's beneath them. They just don't understand what they're even discussing or being asked to discuss. So it's cool that, again, just the right people get it and they can get away with it.
Absolutely. So true.
But like you say, there's just so many social and civil stuff having to be called into question. And it's cool that, if anything, these great shows can remind people about stuff that is taken for granted nowadays that should still be reminded about.
Yes, that still reverberates through all these years back through the decades.
Why do you think we talk about some of our favorite fantasy and horror movies? Because there's social commentary often in them.
Yes, there are. And you don't realize, if you think about it, and a lot of it still applies. The ones that are good, it ages well. It doesn't age at all, really. It still ages no matter how many years go by. So certain things continue to go and become favorites for the next generation and the next generation, and it doesn't change at that point. It's not just the baby boomers or Generation X. It transcends generations.
1000%. And oh man, it's just so deep, so deep, so dense.
Yes, it is.
It is fun looking up some of her commentary, how she had some unused material for the Quester tapes, as well as the show Logan's Run. And on Logan's Run, there was a sentient human-like android called Rim, and that character wasn't in the movie or the book version, but was on the show, and it was noted as being similar to the Quester character that Roddenberry had for his own TV pilot. Yes. And RIM leftover scripting was used for the developing of data on next gen, so that's pretty cool.
Yes, you don't throw away good material just because it doesn't. The show doesn't last. You reshape it and use it.
Yeah, no need to write anything, just blend old stuff and detail that. Yeah.
Why not? Sure, absolutely.
And I applaud her on her Hugo Award nom. That's kind of an award show that doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, it's so hard to win something like that.
Yeah, especially nowadays. Um, it's so politicized. The Hugo Awards. Before you have to read the book, read the thing. Talk about it, whatever. And now it's just like
Even
you know what?
Peabody Awards, I don't see as much talked about as those. I'm like, isn't that it? Well, that was a big deal, especially in the
It
90s.
was right. It was. It just gets fluff nowadays. It doesn't get um the recognition that you used to get. I want Peabody Award. I want I want Hugo. Yeah, it's great, but back then it was a big deal. I mean,
Stuff we wish we could talk about more. Yeah.
although the funny thing is, I mean, it's Star Trek was only on for 3 seasons, the original TOS. And it's just funny that out of the 3 seasons, for instance, like Leo Nimoy never got an Emmy for being a lead on a TV show.
I see so many people complain about action and even horror movies not getting enough recognition. I'm like, yeah, but you better recognize that sci-fi especially gets mocked. There's still some people who, I mean, that's why they would borrow, for B5, track directors like Adam Nimoy and Mike Vijar, because they're the only ones who know how to shoot it and organize it this way, even though we're using the same techniques that are being used in all the medical and procedural shows. It's just people, like you say, when they put up a barrier and they don't want to understand something, just the ignorance just is abound, unfortunately.
That's true. People just there's prejudice. I'll use the P word. They have a prejudice against sci-fi in many ways. From the Academy Awards to every other award, anything else out there. You just think that's not as good as drama. It is drama. It's great. You write it well. You remember that just as well as all the other shows out there. It's just set in space or set somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's the writers that determine that.
Just because it has star in it doesn't mean it's bad.
Right. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's less good than being in a hospital or being in out west. Back in the westerns. It's just a different, just a different setting. But you can transport to different areas. Still the same issues that involve. People who want to improve themselves or have a problem, they're trying to resolve it, and they're going through it and going through it as humans and having the foibles and problems in dealing with that and with things outside their control and things that they can control and deal with human beings with their fallacies and issues and personalities.
Oh boy. Having to deal with just so much that we just wish wasn't a deal. But
yeah, like I said, sometimes which goes back. Sometimes people enjoy being, during the pandemic, just doing the Zoom meetings or just working out of the house. You don't have all this politics right there. You did what you had to do, and you're done, and you have to deal with all the collateral stuff that needs to be taken care of while you're in the office setting, which is good with that.
Go for it. Alrighty. Well, it's been a delight having you on here. And anything you would care to promote, if anything?
Promote? No, not per se. Like I said, the only thing I promote actually is that I'm on Facebook a lot. People see who I am, Jim Ho or Jimmy Ho or whatever, and I'm around a lot, and I post a lot of things on my timeline. The only thing I promote is that, heck, just because you have issues, I have issues, like you have issues. My issues, I've got bipolar. I'm high functioning. I'm not a total crazy person. I'm transparent about. Everyone knows I have it. And
let's not villainize anybody. Yeah.
Right. I'm not. I don't feel stigmatized by it. And like I said, it's something I have to live with. I live with it, And it's not shameful. It's not a shameful subject that should be buried like back in the old days. I mean, if it was cancer or anything else, then then people talk about medical issues. It is a medical issue. It's medical issues in my head. It's my brain chemistry. It gets wacko sometimes. I work on it. I get right. So that's the only thing I promote. The fact that mental health is important. All these issues, PTSD, everything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's not shameful. You need to talk about it. You need to confront it. Deal with it. Like all the other medical issues out there, whether it be cancer, dandruff, whatever. You need to deal with whatever medical issue you have, and try to cope with it and make it part of who you are. And that's who I am.
Instead of just keep running away from it, acting like it doesn't exist. It's like, well,
right, exactly. It does exist, So that's what I tell people. People know I'm bipolar. People who know me. And I just said, that's who I am. I mean, you get to know me. I'm a little crazy. That's Jimmy Ho, the crazy person, but I'm not totally crazy. And I think most people like me, and we take it from there. That's all. With my bipolar, so yes.
It's been an honor to get to know you, especially going back and forth.
Well, great. It's been a wonderful time talking to you. I truly enjoyed talking on this.
Yeah, I'll get you on for some other fun chats, and I'll let you know when this episode airs.
Sounds good. Let me know. That'll be great.
1000%, and you be safe out there.
Thank you very much. Take care.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and foodie debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up